Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. Once again, we're honored on this Friday to have State Senator Mark Messmer, representing District 48, in the studio to talk about what has happened in the legislation this week and what may be coming up next week. But we're going to center on a survey that he conducts and legislators do conduct, and it proves that they look at it and it is important to them. Senator, welcome to the show.
Very good. Thank you for the invitation. I always like to come in on Fridays. The day when I'm home, we get to come in and catch up on what's happened.
Right.
I really appreciate that.
And we really appreciate you coming in. Well, let's start going on your survey, and the first question you're going to talk about, we're going to talk about a little bit more in depth.
Okay. Well, the first thing I had on my survey, because I was pretty sure this was going to be, first and foremost, and it ended up being Senate Bill 1.
Number one.
So, and the question was, do you support, the sale of alcohol on Sundays? Senate Bill 1, and there's a companion bill in the House. Not sure the number of that one, but it's basically from noon to 8 p.m. moving, Sunday sales at every place that has retail outlets to allow that to happen. That bill voted out of committee 10-0 in the Senate, and I think 12-0 in the House to move those, to the floor. Our Senate bill is up for final passage Monday, and the House bill is up for final passage Monday. Both of them due for their final vote on, for the first half of session, and I thoroughly expect that to pass. My results came out 65% support, 35 opposed, and we had one person testify about the potential social impact of of alcohol sales on Sunday. But the retailers, the package stores, everybody's agreed to move on past that issue and go ahead and they all agreed to just support that move and allow that to happen, because my results are not unusual for most people's results, a 2-to-1 margin that folks want to be able to buy their alcohol on Sunday, and we've got it set up right now with an 8-hour window, and most states that have it on Sunday have a limited of hours of operation like that.
Okay. Now, people hear what they want to hear, or they stop hearing once they hear something. And so when I heard this news at the beginning of the week, and you had been in and talked about that it's probably going to pass, and I thought, well, it didn't pass because something didn't pass that had
Correct.
to do with alcohol sales on Sunday.
But there's really two different issues.
Okay.
One is Sunday sales, which has really, over time generated pretty broad support. And the biggest reason we didn't move that issue in the past is the large retailers have 3/4 of their business on the weekends. The grocery stores and who would stand to benefit the most from moving that availability to Sunday. They anticipate seeing their sales go up, and the package stores anticipate seeing their overall sales go down, because that Sunday business is typically not going to be traffic that they would see where the retailers have those clients in their stores already. So they've typically fought that, but at this past session, the package stores and the rest of the retailers all agreed, okay, we're just going to move past that. We're all going to support it, and came to testify in committee that that issue's been settled. There's enough public sentiment to want that, and they, the package stores realize they're going to lose a little bit of sales probably in total, and the large retailers will benefit from it, but they've agreed to just move that on. Because that alone is not a huge policy shift, for them to allow that to happen. We already did have Sunday sales in restaurants, at farm wineries, and at craft breweries. You could already do carry-out sales on Sundays in those limited situations. So it wasn't that we didn't allow any Sunday sales; we just didn't allow it at the retail level.
Okay, so now that Sunday sales is probably going to pass.
It should probably pass.
But then the other part is the cold beer, which
cold beer.
That did not come out of committee.
Correct.
Is that right?
That was defeated in the Senate by a 9-to-1 vote against, allowing cold beer sales everywhere. And the big debate on that is, since coming out of Prohibition, we've limited cold beer sales, to packaged liquor stores, and eventually have opened up, alcohol sales, for beer and wine, and now, in drugstores with a, if you have a drugstore permit, you can actually have, hard liquor there as well. But those had always been cold beer had been restricted to just the package stores, and we had testimony, by one of the package stores, and I had other folks bring in, their accounting analysis. If they would lose Sunday sales or cold sales, here again, if they would lose the ability to have the only cold sales, it's about half of their profit. And with that shift of allowing it to go to everybody with the alcohol permit, that would be enough to financially not make their package stores viable. I mean, it would be a big enough of a drop.
Sure, 50%'s a lot.
50% of their profit.
Yeah, yeah.
So if that would go away, it makes them unsustainable.
So basically, then package stores and those that do it now can still sell cold beer like they do Monday through Saturday.
And they'll allowed to on Sunday.
They'll be allowed to on Sunday. It's just that the big package stores, which now will get their Sunday sales, will not be able to have cold beer.
The rest of the grocery stores and, if you don't have cold beer now, you won't be able to have cold beer after July 1, if things pass but the cold beer sales got defeated in committee, because basically you're taking the business model that we've set up, that we've valued that privilege at a pretty high degree. You could buy a typical beer and wine, permit from the state for $1,000. If you have a packaged liquor store license, those typically go in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, because you've really, and what sustains that whole business model is the cold beer sales. So if you move that and make no other changes, and there's really nothing easily done, that could keep the business model that the state set up. We set the rules. They've lived by it. They can basically sell nothing else. Of any substance that could replace that. We've restricted their non-alcohol products to, I think, 14 items, chewing gum, very limited list of items they can sell other than alcohol. But there's really nothing that could be done to replace, the loss of their cold beer, franchises that they've got. So
kind of like a little trade-off in a way, and seems to make everybody happy.
Yeah, okay. Sunday sales, they'll see a little bit of loss. The grocery stores will see some gain, but not enough to put them out of business.
You take their profit margin away.
Correct.
Okay, then other things on your survey that.
Second question on should a person be required to have a background check in order to be able to get a carry permit, and that one was 87% that they felt people needed to maintain that. I mean, our actual Constitution says there should be no restriction, on a person's ability to carry a firearm for self-protection. So if somebody would actually challenge our state law, the state would probably lose, but nobody's ever actually challenged it. But that's the current law. They require a background check, and right now we've got that process down to about a 1-week turnaround. I mean, years ago it used to be 6-8 weeks. Now the state does a pretty good job of turning those around pretty quickly. There's a small fee really for a lifetime license. It's not enough to be prohibitive. But if somebody would challenge it, the state would probably lose. But nobody ever has. But most of my respondents, 87%, said keep it that way. So and there's no bills really moving that I have seen. There's a House member that's filed a bill, to repeal the requirement for a personal carry permit. But at this point, it's not been scheduled for hearing, and I don't think it's going to move. But there is a representative that has that. Third question on this, and I had a bill that would accomplish this. Should local governments be able to prohibit a person from renting out their home? And the legal term is a short-term rental. Groups like Airbnb, VRBO. There's different platforms use what they call short-term rentals, where you don't allow somebody to rent for over 30 days. And that short-term rental process, 80% of my constituents said the government should not be able to restrict your use for something like an Airbnb, bed and breakfast.
Yep.
Spit that out. And my bill would have done just that. We had a study committee that worked on that issue over the summer. Last year there was a bill that would have done that, but it really got into the weeds on a lot of details of, you know, how many days and what you could and couldn't do, and it ended up bogging down in conference committee. So I had a study committee on that issue over the summer, and we broke it down, and we had local government, we had people from the industry, we had private citizens come in that had short-term rentals, and we came out of there with a study committee recommendation. If it's your personal property, if it's your homestead, the government should have no ability to restrict what you do with your homestead. Now, they can regulate parking, they can regulate, you know, noise, they can regulate, you know, things that they, you know, do in your own neighborhoods or anyway, but they can't, you know, wouldn't be able to. The committee recommendation was no restriction on your personal property. If you have an investment property, if it's not your homestead that you claim a homestead credit on, then they can set up some parameters. And I've got a bill that I was scheduled to hear this week, but the House version of that bill is up for final passage on Monday. And Representative Lehman is carrying that legislation in the House, and it got out of committee unanimously, his bill. And last year, he was the same author of a similar piece of legislation, but it really had too many details in it that ended up just getting, you know, bogged down in conference committee. But his bill passed out of committee unanimously, which has never happened before, and is up for final passage on Monday. So if his bill passes Monday, my companion bill to that in the Senate is scheduled to be heard on Thursday, and I'll just take it off the schedule. If his bill passes, then I'll be the sponsor of his bill in the second half.
Okay. As long as you get some credit.
I will. Okay. He's the author. I'd be what they call the Senate sponsor.
Okay.
So that, and 80% of my respondents said government hands off. And that's my opinion. That's the study committee recommendation opinion. You know, and I think that's the direction we're moving. He had a few more details than I had in my bill on if it's not your primary residence, you know, what kind of framework should be in place, limitations on permit fees and things. But I mean, the basic crux of the bill, our two ideas were exactly the same.
Okay.
Next question: should Indiana require able-bodied adults to look for work in order to receive public-funded health care coverage under the Healthy Indiana Plan? And that had a 91% yes. If you are an able-bodied, healthy adult and you're on, you know, HIP 2.0, which is what we call the Healthy Indiana Plan, if you're able to work, you should be working, or at least show that you are looking for work. And that's a reasonable recommendation. I mean, if you're going to get free or, you know, basically free health care, yeah, you should be looking for, you know, for a job. And if you're able to. If there's people who physically are not able to work.
Sure.
And I get that, and I don't think anybody's opposed to, you know, helping people truly need. But if you're capable of working, you should be at least attempting to look for work. So I don't know if there might be a House bill dealing with that. I anticipated that would probably be an issue that, you know, somebody would file. And I try to file all my bills based on what I am reasonably sure there's going to be, you know, a bill in the process. You know, because I want things that are going to tell me when those issues come up. You know, because I've had surveys where half the stuff on the survey, it's not even a bill being considered. So I'm not, you know, I try to make mine specific to things that I anticipate to be coming before us, so I know what the constituents want. Next question was, Indiana schools currently set their own calendars. Should schools be prohibited from starting class before the last Monday in August? And the tourism industry would like to see that issue moved, you know, to give people like Holiday World, you know, more of a summer. My respondents said, you know, 65 to 35 to no, don't put up, you know, state limitations, you know, on that. That's varied from 50-50 to this one's 65-35 in the past. You know, and I don't know that there is a school calendar bill. I believe Senator Leising has it. I don't know that it's going to get before the floor. I think last year we had that bill, and it actually it got defeated 24 to 25. I believe was the final vote. So that one, I don't know that the bill will move this year, but if it does, I will probably stick with my constituents. Okay, next question. Should illegal immigrants who were brought to the United States as children be eligible to receive the same in-state tuition rate as legal residents? And that one was no by a 62 to 38 margin. I have had that issue before us, I think 5 years ago when I was a House, and that's the way I voted then, was if you're not a legal resident, if you're not a legal resident, why should you get in-state tuition? That's what our current policy is now. There is some push by members of the General Assembly to bring that back and vote on it again and try to allow illegal aliens, if they've lived here, to get in-state tuition. But my constituents say no, and that's why I voted before, and I'll stay consistent with that. One that ended up about as close to a 50-50 vote as you could, and this bill did not end up moving in either of the House or Senate versions that I thought would, because it's kind of tied to the Sunday sales, how you display your alcohol in retail stores. Currently, there's no restriction on where alcohol can be displayed in a grocery store. Do you support or oppose requiring stores to keep alcohol in a separate, confined area away from other products? And that one came out 50.15% yes and 49.85% no.
That's pretty close.
That's pretty close.
Yeah.
And last year, as we were moving through the Sunday sales issue, that was a piece of that component, is if we're going to give retail stores Sunday sales. The last time we had that bill moving, and the way that bill started last year, was for retail stores to segregate it. Just take some shelves and set up a separate area where minors can't get to it, and then remove the restriction for Sunday sales. This past interim, the retailers and the package stores, all agreed to just let that issue be a straight up or down, Sunday sales or not, without the restriction of the segregating the product off. That was kind of the hanging point 3 or 4 years ago, I think, probably 4 years ago, when we got that bill close to passage last time. But that requirement was removed by the package and retailers to just let it move straight on a Sunday sale without that segregation requirement. That came out about 167 in favor and 166 opposed.
That's pretty close.
And when I get my mail-in surveys, these percentages I don't anticipate changing much. These are just based on the online ones. We'll have another 1,000 or so roughly mail-in ones that we're going to tabulate this week. But historically, my percentages really don't change much from the people that do it online versus the people that mail them in. The last one, in order to limit prescription drug abuse, should doctors be required to check a patient's prescription history before issuing a new prescription? And that was a 86 to 14, yes, they should. And we've got that in a limited state now, but there is bills that have been filed that would require them to do that, that full check of your, because people do doctor shopping. Basically, they'll get the same prescription at multiple doctors to get opioids. Mm-hmm. Big part of the opioid crisis is people that get multiple prescriptions, and then they
illegally,
really,
yeah.
by getting them from more than one doctor for the same ailment, and then they take those on the black market and sell them. Mm-hmm. Big part of the opioid abuse problem right now. So I believe that bill will move before the session's out, and is crafted to do just that, to require, just like we do on, there's instant background checks on other parts of our criminal history, and so the technology is there to do that and do it when you buy pseudoephedrine.
Right.
It's instantaneous, and you're limited on how many containers of that, how many boxes you can get per month, and it's an instant check, and so if you go to the next store down the street,
they know it.
They know it. So the technology is not that hard to implement to do that, but we've moved that way, but it's never been pushed to full implementation yet.
Well, Senator, thank you once again for coming in. Look forward to seeing you a week from now here on 18 WJTS. And by the way, next Saturday, the 27th of January, at the Center for Technology, Innovation, and Manufacturing on the campus of VUJC will be the legislative breakfast hosted by the Jasper Chamber of Commerce and VUJC. Senator Mark Messmer will be there, as well as the state reps will be there as well. It's a chance to hear them and then talk to them and ask questions in person at that event. It's free. Make sure you plan on joining us for that. We'll be there as well.
Okay.
Senator, thank you for coming in.
My pleasure.
Thank you for watching WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.